Welcome to Insights and Inspiration. I'm Andrew Marlowe.
And I'm Monica Marlowe. And tonight we have a special guest, Lou Agresta.
Hey, Lou.
Hello. Hello. I'm here and exhausted.
Well, that's kind of how it is on Tuesday nights. Usually we're all really tired, but we agree to do this anyway because we just can't love ourselves enough. So Lou, go ahead.
So you keep saying that. I really wish you wouldn't.
Sorry. Well, we did love ourselves.
We do love ourselves.
We would do better. So anyway, Lou, I understand that you've got some big stuff going on tomorrow.
That's right. Tomorrow at 10 in the morning, Eastern Standard Time. Grimmerspace Kickstarter goes launch.
That is so exciting.
It is exciting.
I'm excited for you guys. So
I'm in a panic.
Well, that too. I mean, that's to be expected.
So how did this get started?
Ron Barton and I... What's that?
I was going to say, or maybe I should ask, because we know what it is and we're excited.
Yeah,
but maybe,
what is Grimmerspace?
But maybe we should ask for our audience's sake, what is Grimmerspace?
We just jump right ahead.
Just jump right in, assume everyone knows. Grimmerspace is a setting and adventures for the Starfinder role-playing game. It connects the Starfinder default Starfinder setting to a no magic horror universe, a science fiction, science only horror universe. And in it, these godlike sort of supernatural wizard beings have come through a gateway, and they've wound up in a world that's been fighting alien facehugger horrors since the dawn of their civilizations. And they look around and say, "There's no magic. This is going to be easy."
I want to play
this. And the Grimmers, after getting used to this idea about magic, which is totally new to them, they're like, "Oh, really? How about I shoot a mage in the neck? How about that?" And so we're pitting science fantasy against science fiction, and adding to the Starfinder default setting by creating a science only horror universe that it can connect to.
Neat.
That is awesome. So then, how did you and Roan and Sean Astin end up in the same thought space?
Well, Sean and Roan and I have been friends for a while. We had another role-playing game project that we were working on a few years back that we're still working on, that we went traipsing around Hollywood. In the course of that, we became closer friends.
We actually kind of missed that. You cut out what you were traipsing around Hollywood doing what?
Traipsing around Hollywood pitching things. And in the course of that, we got to be closer friends, and we had a project we were working on. So when Grimmerspace came up, it was very natural to contact Sean and say, would you be willing to give your creative input?
That's cool. Because actually, to be fair, I had not heard that he was a big gamer. I mean, now that there's a lot more, I mean, because I knew that you talked about possibly having Vin Diesel as part of this, and
No.
I lied.
But
Ignore
hey,
me. But if
Vin,
he wants to,
if you're listening,
can he call me too? I mean,
Yeah.
I apologize. No, I guess I don't know how I ended up with that misconception.
That's all right, but I love that idea. No, I think it's fair to say that Roan and I introduced Sean more fully to gaming.
Oh, okay.
And his role in the project is creative developer, which is the person who reviews everything the writers are designing and gives them their feedback, to shape their direction. So Sean's role is to come in and look at everything creatively and be like, this isn't scary enough. This isn't fun enough. What if we change this? What if we do that? What if we do this instead? And primarily to focus on keeping everything cinematic, powerful, have a Hollywood punch. He's already had a pretty strong impact on the setting. He's had us change a number of things that we've been developing. So
it's always kind of fun. One of the things that I always talk about because I'm not the strongest developer or game designer, but I am the 5-year-old that if you can't explain it to me, it's too hard to figure out.
It's funny you say that. That's exactly what Sean said to us. Explain it like you're explaining baseball to a 5-year-old.
Well,
okay.
And if you can explain it to a 5-year-old or your token 5-year-old, then you've done what you need to do. It needs to be easily captured, and it needs to not be super complicated, because that really bogs down the game sometimes.
Yes,
so.
and in explaining, you need to have a conversational approach so that you're not getting bogged down in the jargon.
Yeah. And that's actually, one of the things that I really like about some of the newer games that, I started out in the red box too. I mean, I started out with D&D like everybody else, but being able to bring
Holmes Basic.
Yeah. Being able to bring something to a table and be able to quickly jump into it and get into the game is an important part of it for me. So being able to
no doubt.
So when you were like able to explain, science fantasy versus science fiction, that kind of brings certain things to the table, like Star Trek versus Star Wars.
Yeah, that could be in there. I mean, we're going a little darker,
Well, yeah.
We're going a little more horror,
You've got a little bit more face huggers in there than Star Wars and Star Trek.
Right. Well, it's not like you couldn't have a Star Trek setting. In fact, we have one of our what we call polities, or star nations, the places that players are most likely to come from, that could have something like a Starfleet Academy. It's just that if you're there on the worst day they've ever had. There are red shirts in the hall already dead. The tribbles have fangs. I mean,
they're assimilating people in the hall.
Yeah, it's Starfleet Academy's worst day. Worst day ever. Because it's Grimmerspace.
Right.
It's cool.
So where did the mashup idea of this come from?
From an argument.
From an argument? That's a great source for all sorts of ideas.
Rhoda and I were discussing whether or not we had certain ideas we wanted to develop, and we were looking at Starfinder, which is such a fun system to play in so many ways. And we were also started to argue about who liked more fantasy in their science fiction and who liked more science fiction in their fantasy, chocolate and my peanut butter. And and in particular, I started pointing out that there was some literary, he didn't see there being a lot showing up in
we've lost that.
Yeah, we lost that part where he
Oh, sorry. He was on me about there really being instances of fantasy showing up in the science fiction. You want to move this here? This might be better. And I was like, oh, come on. There's Poole Anderson's High Crusade. There's Piers Anthony and his Split Infinity stuff. There's Hero's Journey by Sterling E. Lanier. There's classic and pulp sci-fi that did it, because we were both thinking that we liked our science fantasy a little more, our science fiction a little more pure, and then as we began to argue back and forth whether it was possible, and we started pulling up literary references to tell the other person that they didn't know what they were talking about, and Roan's a lot taller than me, so I try to get up on my toes. Then we said, all right, well, instead of trying to decide what the setting ought to be, why don't we let it play out? Why don't we let science fantasy and science fiction go head to head, and then start creating a world and let the players decide. Let them tell us which works better by just making them attack each other.
That's cool.
That is cool.
Yeah. So it's bullets versus fireballs, and ultimately you can play either side. You can take your pick. Although in the course we're a little bit in favor of the Grimmers because they are getting invaded.
Right.
Well, I was going to ask because, having played other games before where they pit supernatural things against other supernatural things, how did you work out your balance then between fireballs and bullets? Was that something that
we don't really have to work that balance out mechanically because Starfinder already takes care of it.
Oh, that's true.
Right. What we did need to do was decide on how magic was going to play out. Like, for example, so these wizards come through a space-time, a rip in the space-time continuum, and they come through a gateway. And when they do, magic begins to leak into this end of the universe for the first time, right? And it's leaking in from elsewhere. So magic is not a universal force; it's a localized effect, right? So now it's showing up. So that means people in the Grimmerspace universe for the first time, suddenly they have technomantic abilities that they didn't know existed before. But it also means that until the arrival of the Thunder Mages, they didn't have the drift drive. That's a magic thing. So we did have to invent, what was the technology here for interstellar travel beforehand? How does that work? How does that balance against something like the drift drive?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's cool. So then is there then the premise that there's like it's more concentrated magic and then it starts to disperse and it's like, so like areas further away have fewer and like altered individuals,
like low
and
magic and high magic areas.
Right. Well, it allows GMs the ability to decide that that's what they want to do. So you can set the dial on your magic level that way just by saying, hey, we're over on this part of the edge. And it's too far from the seed. That's the rip in space-time. So magic is lower in the following ways. Or not, right? Because
or you're right in the middle of it.
Like it gives that lever to the GM. They can decide. The default way we play though is, yes, magic's leaking in for the first time. Yes, it starts showing up first closest to the seed. But it quickly becomes ubiquitous and available through a drug. It's a drug called moat. And there are some setting secrets involved about why it's being dispersed and treated like a party drug. But once you've got hooked on it and you take your little monocular and inject it into your eye, that's how you take this stuff. You can access magic wherever you are. And it's a little bit in development still, so much so that we didn't decide to put it out there as a default setting, but we think that a default setting feature, but we are in talks with some designers about a character class or archetype that specializes in the magic in concentrated versions, doses of moat. But be that as it may, you have magic leaking in for the first time. You have certain setting secret reasons why it's going to spread. And you have the ability to carry it around portably and dose up anytime you need to get your magic on.
So you have to get your magic on by dosing, or is it once you've done this enough it sticks with you, or is that still in development?
The concept, it's still partially in development, but the concept is that you will dose your way through. But it's not so different mechanically from you have this many spells you can memorize per day.
Right. You can dose once per day, and it gets you your spell slots.
Yes, and for various reasons, it's pretty ubiquitous and easy to get a hold of mode. It's not like we're not trying, and we don't invent a new bookkeeping system for more things people have to keep track of.
Right.
Or a way to limit magic. But it is a way to steer it into precisely the flavor you want. Much like we have created tools to let people set the horror levels that they want.
So this is going to be a setting book with a lot of dials to adjust. And so if I run Grimmerspace and you run Grimmerspace and my neighbor down the block runs Grimmerspace, we can all have different dials set to different things. So I can have my horror cranked all the way up, my magic all the way up, and the guy down the street can have his horror up most of the way, but his magic dialed way down and be closer to like aliens.
And you're exactly right. And you're still playing in the same logically consistent setting. Like nothing that is going on is going to clash with doing it either way. And then it also depends on where in the timeline. So not part of this Kickstarter, perhaps part of another one, is the overarching story of the clash between science and magic. This initial Kickstarter puts the world in your hands, and in fact, the main book is called Setting and Adventures, because it's half setting and half adventures, 50-50. If fully funded, it's a 256-page book with about 14 or 15 different locations. Every single location gets a short adventure. So there's no place in the setting book that you don't also have a plug-and-play ability to instantly begin gaming.
That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, where you are in the timeline of the overall Grimmerspace story will also speak to how much magic there is, versus, how intense. There's always horror, though.
Well, I was gonna comment on that. I love the way that you have the magic imported into the body, because as a nurse, like, there are so many people who have such hangups about things being poked in their eyes that
yes.
like that's just icing on the cake for me, because I mean
is there some people you'd like to poke in the
eye? I used to wear contacts. I mean, I have no compunction about putting my fingers and putting things, but Andrew, when they start like showing needles going towards eyes, he's like, no.
No, it's not that bad. I can do that. It's actually the worst for me is when you get. No, I can do okay with that.
Try putting drops in his eyes.
See, that's what I was about to get at. My own eyes are a different story altogether. Fictional eyes, I can watch. Unless it's something like the actual red eyes, like the ads in newspapers or in magazines or whatever, where it's a picture of an eye with all the red in it. It makes my eyes water. I can look at it, but it makes my eyes actually water. Actually, talking about it, my eyes are watering now.
The cover of our monster book, which is called the Xenophiles, is a living eye. Is the monster.
So
I'm now picturing you with a big giant bottle of Izine.
So. He would.
That would require me to put it in my eye.
So we have a couple people watching, and they're like, "Yeah, I hate the eye thing." So this is great.
Well, that was the thing that we always do at every stage of writing and development on Grimmerspace, and we've written quite a bit. Is we always stop and ask, "Where's the horror?" Because sometimes we've been inventing things, like we're inventing Gylor, the junkyard planet, where in the thriftic binary, where everyone follows a philosophy of thrifticism, saying all things should be recycled and efficiency of use, and they give rise to these salvage companies that your player can join. You could be a member of the Touchdown Salvage, and we're all excited. We're creating this, and it's like, whoa, where's the horror?
Man, if it's not Soylent Green, you've missed a good opportunity.
No, you found it. Soylent Green is one of the places we have horror there. Absolutely, you found it.
I know.
And what evolved out of that actually were three different locations. Fujura, the very high-end roboticists who interpret their thrifticism to mean nobody should use anything. It should just all be done by robots. And that leads to this kind of, and that's their version of it. And they're very wealthy. Then there's another group that says everything should be for resale. And so they created the Endless Mall. And if that isn't horrific, I don't know what is.
And it's Christmas time all the time.
And then on Gylor, the junkyard planet, where everything has to be reused over and over again, and anything new is forbidden or looked down on. So you get the horror of everything getting taken care of and you not having to do anything, which sounds good at first, but after a while, is really, it's the horror of disempowerment, and it's the horror of wealth inequality throughout the system, and the problems that it causes. Whereas in the Endless Mall, if absolutely anything is available for sale and everything in a recycled version is here somewhere, we start getting into Clive Barker Grand Bazaar territory, and we start getting into Willy Wonka in the rowboat. Anything you can imagine, or Narnia, where they go into the island of dreams in Prince Caspian, and anything you imagine is going to come. So, oh my gosh, what a horror! Don't imagine it.
Like, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man is totally out.
Yes, exactly. They probably sell little Stay Puft Marshmallow. Actually, they won't, because there's no Earth references throughout.
Oh, well, that's true. But they could have their own.
But that becomes the horror of desire unfettered, and where that can lead you if you're not careful.
To excess and stuff like that. That is awesome.
And danger. And then Guy Lore itself is if you're trying to come up with anything new, everyone is against you. And everything has to get reprocessed. And of course, yes, you picked it. That's where we get into Soylent Green. But that's also the horror of all of society's against you if you're the dreamer and the thinker.
You know, it's interesting. Yeah. I talk about this like every time it comes up, whenever we talk about like recycling things. Many, many years ago, when I was 29 the first time, no, I was actually 19 the first time. When I was in college, I took a class on medieval literature, but the professor was a undergrad graduate level class, and the professor was amazing. And one day she said, you know, we were reading these books, these medieval manuscripts basically that were bound, and someone said something about, well, this is just that story, and she's like, that was the beauty of the storytelling thought process and the audiences of the medieval times, where it wasn't that they cared that they were hearing Beauty and the Beast again. It was that they were hearing it in a new and different way, but it was the same story told, you know, in that. So that kind of leans more on like the high fantasy sort of, you know, upbeat, optimistic, and you're actually kind of leaning more heavily on the
inverting that. Yeah. The pessimism. Well, because it's where's the horror.
Yeah.
And if you. And it's also the horror of getting trapped in your own cycles recycling. So you go in there and you say, I've got this new invention. We'll finally get out from underneath the boot of Fujura and be wealthy. We don't have to be flying around the galaxy, you know, collecting salvage. And they'll be like, we don't want anything new. So no. And the suffering continues. Yeah. And the touchdown salvage organizations or the salvage companies you can form also, you know, some of them are there to help. They're the tugboats of the void, or some of them show up and they're like, shh, touchdown salvage the ship. Is there anyone aboard? Nope. Okay, we can start hauling it away. You're like, no,
no, we're still here.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't hear anything. They're breaking up. It must be an automated, you know, signal.
It's kind of like that episode of Firefly, when they have to abandon the ship because it's been damaged, and they take off in the tugs, and Mal stays behind, and they try to salvage.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that one. Yeah, that is almost. I mean, again, if you introduce more horror and a darker tone, and there's many aspects that are original. But that bears a distant resemblance to a salvage story, sure. But yeah, so even in something like Junkyard Planet and Mall and Robots, we always had to stop and go, where's the horror, and focus on that.
I can see Repo Man in there too somewhere.
Yeah, for sure.
The organs, you know, you didn't make your payments. Taking your spleen back.
Yep. Yeah. Although we do, while we have 14 categories of horror that we plan to cover. So like if you take a look at the free download adventure Abattoir 8, which Richard Pett was the lead designer on, and takes place in a floating suborbital in an orbital abattoir, the slaughterhouse, right? Which has suddenly stopped producing food for the nearby colonies. What could go wrong? So Um, in that, there's a couple things going on. One, no earth animals, so we had to come up with something. So there's an animal called a thunk, and it's everyone's favorite ungulate, and it's edible, and it's been bred for thousands of years to like docilely run to the grill. Oh, cook me! So, oh yeah, it's horrible. And
sounds delicious.
Right. Well,
tastes like chicken.
Richard Pett has this thing about pigs. He writes him into every adventure. And when we got his first Starfinder adventure, we're like, dude, you can't have pigs. There's no, he's like, there must be something. So Thunk was born. In fact, in the Kickstarter, we have a poster. So all right, the Abattoir 8, it's in the Adian Combine. There's a reason I brought this up. I'm forgetting why. It's in the Adian Combine, which is a very industrialized place run by trade barons, and they'll throw bodies before they throw equipment at problems because bodies are cheap. They got a lot of those. And the station is run by Hunger Inc., which is one of the outsource companies that, you keep them working when you work for Hunger Inc., and when you go into the station, their propaganda advertisement posters on the wall that are intended to keep you happy with being a cog in the wheel. And so Roan, who's our art director, found a fantastic artist named Victor Maristain, and we made one of those posters. So there's a 24 by 36 poster of this happy thunk who's like, thunk meat is have yourself a slab of delicious thunk. And he's sitting there in front of a grill while a piece of one of him is being cooked. And he's like,
oh my God, that's awesome. It sounds like something that came out of Fallout or something.
Yeah. The artist was like, you mean like Fallout? We're like, no, it's original, but yes.
Yes, just like that.
Yeah, so yes, we did it in the 1940s, almost, not quite, what's his name? Norman Rockwell.
Oh, okay.
But in that zone.
Oh, okay. So more hyper realistic than cartoony.
Yeah, it's a retro futuristic with happy colors in a kitchen of the future, cooking up a slab of me for you.
One of our friends has commented so it's like the opposite of Chick-fil-A and definitely Fallout inspired feeling. Eat more.
Yeah.
Eat more chicken.
Eat more thunk.
Eat more thunk.
Eat more me. Yeah. And so you're trapped on this station when you visit it. So, but there was a reason that I got to there. How do we get to there? How do we get to the Abattoir 8 and the thunk? What were we talking about just before that?
Other aspects of horror that you're covering. So, hey,
Oh, right. So there's in the course of writing, we identify 14, and on the back of that adventure, that's why I brought this up, you can find all the types of horror listed that and actually in the course of doing things, we came up with the 15th, and we expect we may add one or two more categories. So every adventure on the back of it will say, this is survival horror, this is slasher horror, this is cosmic horror, this is religious horror, this is psychological horror. The types are identified so that you'll know what kind of horror you're getting.
That's cool.
Yeah, and then we gave it an intensity rating. So I mean, we have the joy and wonder of the Paizo compatibility license, but also the limitation. There are certain things that can't be in there, that we can't be too vivid about. And sometimes it was surprising to discover what people felt was over the line and what people felt wasn't over the line. But other than that, we'll label it, this is intense horror, and it's intense horror for the following reasons. Lots of gore, Roan and Lou shirtless, whatever the horror reason is. And so you get those at the back. You get here's what's in this. Here's the type of horror. It's cosmic and body horror. And here's the intensity rating.
Yeah,
that will let people their adventure.
There's definitely.
I was gonna say that's really useful too.
Yeah.
Kind of gives people their outs if they need it.
Well, especially since one of the things that I tend to speak on often is like having those honest conversations at the beginning of any kind of game,
Yes.
whether it's a one shot or if it's going to be a long-term game, is that, what bothers you and what won't we do? Because we had a friend who just like spiders absolutely were out. And so
the word was off limits.
Right. So we couldn't even call it spider climb. We just had to call it climb.
Sticky climb.
Yeah, sticky climb. Yeah, but it was stuff like that because that was right. And having all of that up front or in the back as it is helps, because there are some people who become triggered by those things, and the last thing you want to do is accidentally sit your friend out the back, out the front door because you've made them so uncomfortable.
So we can identify it in advance. We're definitely 13 plus, and we definitely in Grimmerspace will often walk up to oh, there's rated R. I see it right there. Whoa, step back. Okay.
Well, when you said Richard Pett, I mean, he and Nicholas Logue wrote two of the most disturbing Pathfinder games I've ever played in. And they definitely did set a hard line at that point. They're like, you
should play with them live.
Oh, that's right. You know what? I forgot you guys are going to play this weekend, aren't you? Are you going to PaizoCon?
Yes. In fact, this Abattoir 8 adventure will be running 3 to 4 times a day for people. And then on I've got 3 GMs Friday and Saturday, and 4 GMs, myself included, Sunday and Monday. And everyone's going to run a game of Abattoir 8 for people a day. And on Saturday, Roll for Combat is doing a stream to Paizo's Twitch channel live, actual play of and Stephen Clicker's already made up "I died in Grimmerspace" with little badges to add to your lanyards.
Well, I can't. Actually, I'm glad you're going to do live actual play, because I'm off this weekend, but we couldn't make the trip to.
Oh, you're not going to be there? I thought you guys were going to be there.
No, I told you we're going to be at Gen Con, but we aren't going to. I am so sad now. That's all I can say, because I mean, but the problem is I won't be able to get vacation time.
She can't get the vacation time, and we're sending our oldest to China.
Yeah, and our daughter's going to China in a couple weeks. So
I lived there. Where's she going?
She's going with a school group. They're going to go to Shanghai. I'm going to say these wrong. Shanghai, Beijing, and Xi'an.
2 out of 3. You were spot on.
Well, good. Well, that was the one I always have problems with. She's like, "Mom, it's 2 syllables." I'm like, "Yeah, but the other one that you told me was 1 syllable, and I was saying it like 2. I can't get them all right."
Dear friend of mine lives in Beijing at least half the year, and I lived for about a year in China a long time ago. I dropped out of school and played really bad blues guitar in the streets of Taiwan for money.
You have the most colorful backstory ever.
It's true. I was teaching English, which I hated, and I was walking by. I found a guitar in a garbage can, and the neck was a little bent, and it had no strings. But I grew up working in a music store, my grandfather's music store. I grew up selling guitars, and I knew certain things I could do to the neck to soak it and make it a little more straight. And I had enough change to buy strings, and boom, I was in business.
Now, do you have a band? Do you play in a band? Am I thinking wrong?
No.
Roan
is a phenomenal singer. He is a fantastic musician, fantastic musical composer, a sound engineer. I'm a sound engineer hobbyist, and he's had numerous bands, including glam rock bands and all sorts of things. I used to play an adequate guitar and tenor sax, and then it's been too many years. But I come from a family of musicians and people in the music business.
Okay.
Last time I picked up a guitar, it said "don't." Had a friend trying to teach me how to play it. It said "don't" about 3 times, and he took it away from me. He said, "Stop touching my baby." It's like, okay, so that was the end of my bass guitar lessons.
So
anyway,
so Grimmerspace, before we move off of this topic, so this is a Kickstarter that starts tomorrow, in case our listeners missed that, and it's on Kickstarter, and just look up Grimmerspace.
I'm gonna get Grimmerspace.com. We'll take you there. I have to repoint the DNS after I get off this call, actually, but I will give you an interview scoop.
Ooh.
Some people know about this already because it went out to our mailing list. But we have, I think, some things that are kind of unique. We have backer tiers that include the Paizo beginner box and the core rulebook.
Nice.
So you can get the Starfinder Paizo beginner box and the core rulebook and not leave the site, and get that in combination with parts of Grimmerspace that you might be interested in if you're Starfinder curious, or if you're a first-time ever role-playing gamer. And together it's quite a value. And I don't know of any other Kickstarter that's ever offered, like, the core books of the system actually as part of the Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
So we're pretty excited about that. And then do you remember immersive battle maps?
Mm-hmm.
The fold out book that always stays.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the stays flat.
Yeah. So we contacted them, and with much begging and working the relationship, contracted them, and there will be an immersive battle map for science fiction as part of this Kickstarter.
Oh, that'll be awesome.
That'll be awesome.
That will be cool.
So those two things make it very special, even if you're not necessarily or yet a Starfinder player.
I hear my checking account crying already, Lou.
Surprisingly affordable.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, we have the black box for Invisible Sun, so I mean, it's not like we've never paid a little bit of money for a game.
Yeah, I think some of the and the way that this is going to grow. If the way this is going to grow, some of these tiers are going to get huge.
I have a good feeling about this one.
I do
for
too.
You. I mean, I know I've been excited about it for a while.
It's got all the right. It pushes all the right buttons.
Well, and it moves into an area that there's not a lot of support in the Pathfinder, Starfinder. I mean,
universe.
Yeah, there's not a lot of horror that's been well developed. What?
Yeah, there is.
Well articulated. Yeah.
Well,
but it's not the same.
It's not this quality.
I was gonna say it's just not gonna be like the whole setting.
Yeah.
There are pieces of it.
Yeah, there are pieces of it, but nothing quite so
pervasive.
Right. Not so well constructed as a group.
And then we got to tap a whole bunch of core Starfinder designers to join the team.
I saw that.
I was going to ask you, like, who, because I know there's some really big names. We've been keeping up on it. We're excited for some of the names that have shown up.
How the heck did you get Shauna Germain, who has totally got nothing to do with Paizo?
Well,
because she's an amazing writer. I love everything she's done.
Right. Well, that's the thing. She's an amazing writer, and that was more important.
Right.
So, and what we've got her working on is, we gave her a corner of the world, and we said, "Here, this is yours. Here's the parameters. You can't have pigs. You can't. No Earth references. Here's a couple other parameters, and there's an area within Grimmerspace that is, like I said, where's the horror? So every polity, every star nation that has a human variant race that you can play. Some of them so variant they might as well be alien. Also has its own look, feel, and special kind of horror. So we picked the space setting location, the star nation that is best suited to gothic horror, and peopled by a highly advanced culture that focuses on biotechnology, because they're all chasing immortality, medical immortality, and they're highly ritualized, and they're very superstitious, and they've got reasons to be. And we said, here, Shauna, It's yours.
That sounds.
So she's developing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Writing that.
She, with her erotica background and stuff like that, that kind of like personal body and that.
And that gothic-y velvet wine.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And we also threw in, but once a cycle, because they fear the elder builders, the civilization on the solitaire moons, who they have built their civilization on top of, and they fear that they have to propitiate them. So once a cycle, Shauna, they take a whole bunch of people, have a crazy bacchanal up in a giant ziggurat floating in orbit, then walk off all their heads and throw the bodies out to seed the moons with blood and calm the spirits of the elder builders. Can you work that in?
I played that game as an Ewok. I don't know.
No.
I don't know if you saw, we did May the 4th be with you, and James Walls, who runs Cypher and Dungeon Crawl Classic. He started off our day with Saturday morning cartoons, and we played Ewoks that were trying to appease the post Death Star annihilation that happened to the moon of Endor. It was nice. He called it the Ewoks cartoon meets the road. So anyway, so it's kind of
that sounds very Grimmerspace.
Yeah,
Ewoks and the road. Yeah,
the road.
Cormac McCarthy, right? That's where.
Yep. Yes, that's exactly what we're talking.
That's exactly it.
Perfect.
So working backwards, Monica and I have a favorite recommendation for reading, for summer reading.
Yep, Club Anyone. You wrote it a year and a half ago.
Oh no!
Oh no, you locked up! Oh no!
Not now.
Are you there?
Oh, yep, I'm back.
Yeah, so
you got excited and you locked up.
Yeah, you got so excited your computer stopped. So anyway, so Club Anyone. It's my favorite summer read to recommend.
Oh, well, thank you.
It was a great book. It had good pacing. I felt like I got a story, even though I didn't, and I'm not going to say I didn't work hard for it, because that's not true, but it was very engaging and I didn't feel like I had to work hard to get the story.
It was written in the Interface Zero Gunmetal Games world.
Yeah.
And that also came up not quite by an argument, but because Roan got a phone call from David Jarvis at Gunmetal Games and said, "Hey, can you put me in touch with Lou, because I want to give him writing a novel away as a Kickstarter reward, stretch goal. Do you think he'd do it?" And Roan said, "Yes, he'll do it." And then he called me up and said, "Hey Lou, if Gunmetal Games hits XYZ number, you're writing a novel." Because he knew he heard me talk about it so much, he was sick and tired of me talking about it. He wanted it done. And so he put his foot on the back of this little birdie and kicked him out of the nest.
Aww.
Yeah. There are parts of it that are perhaps a bit cathartic. I was going through a divorce at the time. But I think the fun thing is a lot of American readers all said, the pacing was a little slow at first, but when I get into it later on, I heard this a lot. When I get into it later, it really zooms along. I love it. And every European reader was like, it was great, and it was going along so well, and then it suddenly turned into an American movie. So they didn't like the second half as much.
Now, see, I thought both halves worked really well together. I liked the pacing all the way through.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You guys are my fan. You're my favorite. I like you.
Well, I mean, because it's no secret, I have a hard time engaging in a single activity anymore, because I've had to train myself to be able to take care of 25 people at the same time. So, like, just sitting and reading a book just seems like a waste of, like, 75% of my other energy.
Right.
So that book that's what I really liked about it, is that it kept me engaged, and I felt like I was getting motion and activity with it. And so it was perfect for me. And I think it's a great summer read because it is one of those things that you can pick up. And if you do put it down, you're going to want to pick it back up again. That was, it was one of those books that it kind of keeps you coming back. But I think I read like 75% of it in a single sitting.
That's how I read it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I finally had to go to bed. I was like, I got to put this book down.
I was reading it, and then I looked up, and it was like 3 or 4 hours later. I'm like, I didn't know.
So we'll
people are asking me when's dinner.
So
there's an audiobook now.
I know, we're excited.
Wordfire is supposed to come out with an audiobook. But yeah, thank you. And you'll learn about the Interface 0 setting.
Exactly, which is a neat setting.
It is a neat setting.
And to kind of then you do have a book that you're working on, and I'm going to call you out on it. So now you're going to have to finish it for me. So now you have to finish it so I can read it.
Yes, that'll be different. That one will be an urban fantasy.
I like urban fantasy.
I'm attempting to write an urban fantasy that treats the Norse conception of and the Norse, and not just the Norse, but the circumpolar people's conception of magic and the spiritual exactly as if it was real from their perspective, and then that wakes up in modern times, among other things.
Okay, well, I want that one too. So when you need an alpha reader, you know my email address.
You got it.
Yes.
Yeah, because I love that region too,
and that's a great genre.
Mm-hmm.
So
it is. So
it's
then,
like all of our buttons.
So then, moving back even further, so we know that Iron GM. Are you doing something with that at PaizoCon? Or is there something in between?
I was gonna say this isn't even still a segue, because aren't you guys doing Grimmerspace as part of Iron GM Games?
That's correct. So and you'll also see in the Abattoir 8 adventure that we gave away for free that you can get on the Open Game Network or Drive Through RPG, either one, Open Game Store, Drive Through. There are Iron GM pro tips inside the adventure.
Oh,
cool.
So whenever we had advice or something that we learned from watching these amazing improvisational GMs do their thing at our Iron GM event, and we gave that or passed along that advice, we labeled it as such, that it came from that source. So Iron GM, we give out 3 secret story elements, and GMs have 1 hour to create adventures. Players have an hour to make characters. They run a game for 4 hours. Every time someone rolls a natural 20, the whole table shouts bonsai, and we pelt them with plushy D20 dice and hang shiny necklaces around them. Their necks. We have a little bit of a comedy intro where we introduce all the competitors and roast them a little bit, but people dress up in luchador masks and all sorts of craziness. And then Roan usually hosts Player Olympics, where we do something like monster charades or some dragon calling, summon your mate. That's always good for a laugh.
We had an opportunity 2 years ago. Alan Venable and
Gillian Fraser
and Gillian Fraser and Steve Helt. We got together and we had a suite that year, and the kids were sleeping in the bedroom, and we played until like 4 o'clock in the morning.
Fantastic.
And he ran, and
that's a group.
Alan
ran, and he prepared by sleeping.
Yeah, like we were making our characters, and he took a nap. And so then as we print stuff out, he's like checking for monsters, and I mean he was ready to go.
And that's what he won. Was that the year that he won?
Yeah.
He brought his belt, or was it the year after?
Well, he brought his belt with him, so I don't know. I don't know if he had to bring the belt. Did he have to turn?
So he won the year before then. So Jillian's been amazing. She started out. She was always good. She always placed, and then she just started climbing the ranks every single year. Then she and Alan proposed to her at an Iron GM in Gen Con.
Wow.
And then we were all convinced, just watching her climb the scoring, that she was going to win that year, and then he took it away from her.
He's so mean.
Thank you. Sorry.
He came in first, and she came in second that particular year. But she had encouraged him to start to begin with. And they're both fantastic GMs. I think Jillian's better.
Well, it's so it's really funny. It's really funny because as the woman who's behind the man, and having seen so many like gaming power couples, for lack of a better word, it is really interesting how many of the women are so like there's an empowerment to being a female gamer because you've had to fight basically the whole way because you're mostly an outcast, like all of those.
Hopefully we're all working to change,
which I think we definitely are, and it is definitely changing, but it's interesting because my opinion is that Alan did a great job. I've never actually had Jillian run a game for me, so I couldn't say
now,
either
if you
way.
were at PaizoCon, you could, because she's going to run Abattoir 8 there.
I know. We'll be at Gen Con. We'll be at Gen Con. That's it. You want to fly me out? I'm off all weekend. I could be there. I'm just gonna need somewhere to sleep. I'll even run your game for you. I don't care. I'm gonna need a badge, a room, and a plane ticket though.
Ron and I have spent our life savings getting Grimmerspace off the ground.
I know.
I'm not surprised.
I know. Not at all.
It is the stuff that you have out there right now for this is amazing.
Yeah.
The art quality already and the production that's going into it.
Oh, thank you. There's a new piece of art going up that no one's seen yet that shows all the character classes that came out of this in like a big hero shot.
Oh, sweet.
Ooh.
So kind of like the Paizo spread of the Iconics.
Yeah, we kind of like that. We contacted our favorite horror artist, the one who did the Big Boy Thrask, the monstrosity on the cover of Abattoir 8, also gave us our Sunder Mages and our Hodrak. He's Matthias Kolros. He's in Greece, and he's constantly booked. He rarely has time. He sometimes has an injured hand, and he fit us in anyway.
Wow!
And we just said, give us your best. Give us, hook up the nitro tank, unhook the boundaries, show all our character classes, which we didn't even set out to write. We set out to write a setting, but naturally certain character classes just make themselves apparent.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave us a piece of art that I think is just mind blowing. It's gonna be the cover of our player's guide, but it's also the lead in for our Kickstarter video.
Oh, I'm so excited. I can't wait till tomorrow, and I have to work. I may have to watch it on my phone.
You can back by your phone. If you're going to back, please back early.
Oh, I will.
Totally understand people who can, of course.
Well, the nice...
So many I drew deliver, but backing early matters. It affects the Kickstarter algorithms, and it gives us more exposure.
Mm-hmm. Well, and backing early doesn't cost me anything. Not to like put it bluntly. Backing early doesn't cost me anything. I'm happy to. I'll even set my phone 10 o'clock.
I've had people in the past tell me that they waited on backing something because they weren't certain and they were thinking about it, and I just thought, why didn't you just back it at the get go? And if it didn't, if by the time it got to the end of it and you were like,
you can change your mind at the pledge manager. You can just say no thanks.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
I wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't want to do that to somebody at the very end, but up until the last day.
Yeah, as long as you're not going to drop them below their number,
right? Because that's a jerk move.
That is a dick move.
But most of these Kickstarters that we do are like way above that, and the ones we were talking about were all way above that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping that'll be the case too. Well, in recognition of the fact that people are that backing early matters, we have the first 500 backers get a Hodrak mini.
Oh, so I have to be in there.
So Lou, we have a question in chat. What time does the Kickstarter campaign launch?
10 a.m. Unless we have some technical difficulties. So
is that
10 a.m. plus or minus
Eastern
Standard?
Eastern. Okay. So there you go, guys. 10 a.m. EST.
9:50 set.
She backs all of our Kickstarters here.
Yeah, it goes all through my so not to talk about me while you're here, but I love to talk about me. I achieved 270 Kickstarters backed.
Wow, that's amazing.
A couple of Kickstarters ago, and one back when they still had. You remember when they had the like the pie with all the slices in it? It was kind of like the Trivial Pursuit thing, and they had like 15 different categories. I actually went through and found all the categories that I had not backed in, and I tried to back for something low or whatever, but so I'm actually a completionist. I completed the pie in Kickstarter, so I ended up backing like some theater wanted to build themselves Cinderella's they were going to do Cinderella, and they wanted to build a beautiful carriage, so they sent me a picture, and I backed it. I backed some beekeeper because I love honey, and it was whatever. I got honey.
That's great. Well, and that's the thing, and it's true for us too. Kickstarter is about getting a concern. It's about people helping you get off the ground. Mm-hmm. And what this all the great stuff aside, what this Kickstarter means to Roan and I is the ability to focus much more on our creative lives and our creative work, and be able to focus pretty much full time on Grimmerspace and Iron GM Games, which mm-hmm. we intend to build out. Not just this hopefully is simply our first endeavor. So people helping us with this Kickstarter are helping us launch a company, and they're helping us change our lifestyles, change our life focus. Mm-hmm. And that means more than anything.
That I'm one of those people. I'm one of those people who believes that Kickstarter is a way to help other people realize their dreams. And that's why I like to back stuff. And I'm excited that you guys are looking to use it for that because, well,
thank you.
Yeah, it's nice to shop there, but it's not really its purpose.
Yeah.
Right. And other game companies have kicked in a big way, both behind the scenes and up front, in helping us send the message out to people. We have a lot of really amazing people in our corner trying to help us get Iron GM Games, the game company, into launch. Eric Bauer is making gaming paper products available on the Kickstarter. All to help, all just to help us. And,
so
it's kind of humbling, and I hope I don't fail. For that reason, I don't want to let anyone down.
So you have Eric Mona, Jason Bullman, Wolfgang Bauer, and Shauna are the names I remember. Is Owens is in it? Okay.
Ben Ennie award-winning McFarland. That guy's won more Ennies than I, than hair on my head. Shanna Germain, Eric Mona is writing a foreword.
Right.
Adam Daigle, people are Greg Vaughn. He's writing a big 48-page adventure. James Sutter, who helped create Starfinder. Owen, who's currently the lead, designer. We have a lot of top people in our corner rooting for us and helping out.
Well, we are too. I'm really excited. When you told us about it last year at Gen Con, I was like, oh.
Was I sober?
Yeah. Well,
I
mean,
you might have been.
I don't know. I know you and I
early.
drank together.
I was drunk on the happiness of Gen Con and the camaraderie. There we go.
Yeah.
And I'm
sticking to that story.
That's my story. I'm sticking to it too. I don't know. I shared whiskey with you. We had some scotch that I might have carried with me into the building and shared it on the floor. This isn't live or anything, right?
It is.
But I can neither confirm nor deny that really happened. So we'll be seeing you at Gen. Are you going to do anything at Gen Con too? Are you going to try to run anything?
Yeah, I mean, we'll have the Iron GM World Championship. Of course.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll be hosting the industry get-togethers that I usually host. Whether or not we do, whether we do something Grimmerspace and what we do Grimmerspace depends a lot on what happens tomorrow.
Well, I could. Yeah, I mean that's fair. Month. That's fair. But yeah. I'm excited.
So-
yeah, and we'll have stuff on all 3 VTTs. So
That's good.
Fantasy Grounds, D20 Pro, and Roll20.
Okay, cool. Well, we're gonna have Scott's. So the other person who games with us on Friday nights has just popped in, and he probably doesn't even know yet what we've been talking about. But Scott, we're gonna have to teach you. We're gonna have to get our Starfinder skills up because we've got horror to play.
We can help with that.
Yes.
I think we've written the first ever Starfinder Quick Start guide.
Oh, okay. I think we've played it a couple of times, but we're in the middle of a long campaign, and it's just not. We haven't had that break yet.
I think that's the story for a lot of people with Starfinder. That it's been out for a few years, but they're only now starting to really play it because they had campaigns going on.
Yeah, we had stuff going on, so we couldn't squeeze it in. We squeezed in a couple of sessions. I think I ran a couple of the Society Adventures just to get some stuff done. Get a feel for it, see if it was something we liked. So, anywho,
so, I hate to do this. I'm having such a great time, but I have a Kickstarter meeting.
Yes. Yeah, I know, and,
well,
and it's time.
Minutes.
We only go for about an hour. So
we're actually at our point too. So this is a good natural place to wrap it up.
I hope everyone enjoyed. I hope we answered some people's questions and.
Well, and we're so excited. If there's any questions anybody else has, we'll get in touch with you in that. But don't forget to back tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern time. And if you're seeing this on our replay, you need to get over to Kickstarter and back it right away because it's going live. We'll see you in a couple months.
Yes,
in person.
Sounds good.
But we might see you again soon.
Right. Sounds good.
All right. So
thank you.
Thanks, Lou. I'm Monica Marlowe.
I'm Andrew Marlowe.
This has been Insights and Inspiration. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.